to remain virtual because there's still things going around, and we are looking forward to coming back in person, but we feel like it's safer to do it this way. And also it allows us to still include people who are far and near that are joining us tonight. So thank you so much. Let's see here. I'm going to share my screen and go over just a few things with you about, just want to make sure I'm doing this properly. Y'all just say, hey, I guess you can unmute and just say hello, where you're coming in from. If you want to put that in the chat, that would be awesome. So we know where folks are at. I'm actually in Boston right now. So the good thing about Zoom is that we can be a lot of different places and still be in the same spot. Okay. Oh my goodness. I'm trying to get to share my screen here.
Chicago's in the house.
Hey.
Minneapolis, Boston.
Okay.
Coming in from Red Wing. All right.
So the New School of African American Thought is a program of Solidarity Twin Cities. And the mission of Solidarity is to engage people of African descent in their own liberation through historical and cultural education. We do have a Facebook page that if you are not familiar with, you may want to go on Facebook and like that page. That is where you can keep up with all of our events that we have. This one will be also posted there, and we will be sending out a follow-up email. So if you're new for some reason to the New School and you're not getting emails from us, please put your email address in the chat, and we can make sure you get on that list to get the replay of tonight. So we do have a few community rules that we'd like to go over. First, we'd like to ask you to keep your microphone muted at all times unless you're speaking. Use the speaker view if you find that you have a weak connection. Sometimes turn your video off. That can help you to focus on who's talking at the time and maybe not look at all the different things on the Zoom screen. You can submit your questions in the chat. We may also have an opportunity during Q&A for you to engage vocally. We have a small class tonight, it looks like, but so we may be able to do some different things. But we do want your engagement and your questions and comments. So continue to use the chat however you would like. It can be a call and response type of thing. And then we'll be monitoring the chat for questions as the presentation goes on. By being on Zoom, you are consenting to being recorded. We record the sessions, and then also we may be putting this on Facebook, either live or in a recorded format. So just know that it will be on our Solidarity page. And then after the breakout discussions, our format is really an engaging format where we have time for you to discuss the topic before and after. And so please feel free to type your name in the chat if you wish to share out, or you can use the raise hand function on Zoom. We'll be trying to look for that. And then also you can just literally raise your hand, old-fashioned way, and we'll see you. And then lastly, just please enjoy the experience. I think we have a lot of regulars on here that are familiar with New School, but if you're new, just give us a chat about that, and introduce yourself. Let us know if you're a new participant so we can make sure that we are acknowledging you as well. I think I may have, okay, then the next slide is, this is our tradition. This slogan came from Elder who got it from a time when he was in Ghana, Elder Mahmoud El Kati. And what we say is progress. And then the response is, sure, sure, sure. So I'm going to do this call and response with you, and I would like for you to unmute your microphones now. And then when I say progress, you're going to say, sure, sure, sure. Okay, so let's go together now. Progress?
Sure.
Okay, let's try it one more time with a little bit more vigor and just a slightly faster tempo. Okay? Progress?
Sure.
Yes, love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much. And I think with that, I just want to let you know again what the topic is today. We are so honored to have Pamela R. Fletcher Bush with us, who has a storied history as a writer, a cultural arts producer herself, one who is going to share with us about this particular time of the 80s in the Twin Cities. That was a very unique time of a lot of things happening within the arts community, and particularly the literary arts community. And so we're really excited about the topic, and we'll be introducing her a little bit later. But what we want to do initially is to have you think about this topic. And we want to start off with asking you to kind of discuss what you might know already about the 80s and the cultural arts movements, and also what was happening on the literary scene in Minneapolis, and so in the Twin Cities. So we're going to actually ask you to go to a breakout room, and then you're going to be in small groups. And we want to know kind of like, first of all, where were you in the 80s? If you can, you know, you have to kind of remember back. Were you in the Twin Cities? Were you in another major city? Were you even born? We have an intergenerational audience. So think about that. And then what is it that you know about the Black cultural arts movement of the Twin Cities in particular? And if you were not in the Twin Cities, perhaps you have some other references about Black arts movements during that time. So Cedric is going to put us into breakout rooms, or if you think we probably can have 3 rooms, Cedric.
3 rooms, okay.
Yeah, maybe three rooms of 4 or 5 people. And then you guys are going to just introduce yourselves to each other and engage with the people in your room around these 2 questions. I really should be putting them in the chat so that you have them. However, let's see here, what I'll have to do is stop share, and then I can copy these out. Let's see, I can do that. Well, I'm still sharing, but I'll copy them out and put them in the chat. Just so you have them when you go out to your breakout rooms. And this should be a fun, engaging time for you to kind of warm up. And then we're going to ask you when you come back to share what you talked about in your small group. And this is just a way to get this thing started, and then also to see kind of what your thoughts are at the beginning before we hear from the speaker. So does anybody have any questions?
Just a minute, NG. I don't see the function for some reason on my computer for the breakout rooms. I'm going to pause the recording right now.
Major honor for me in that I met Pamela Fletcher Bush in 1991 when I came to North Hennepin, and she was then a faculty of English and teaching English, and really was the person who actually exposed me to the Black literary scene and much of Black art scene in the Twin Cities at that time. And so it's really an honor to introduce my friend and someone who has inspired me in so many ways around just understanding the importance of Black literature, and also the engaging in that cultural production. So I'm honored to be able to introduce you, Pamela, and hope that everyone will just really understand the significance of this opportunity to hear from you directly about this particular topic. So Pamela R. Fletcher Bush is CEO and publisher of Arcata Press, Saint Paul Almanac, and Professor Emerita of English, St. Catherine University in St. Paul, Minnesota. She is a widely published author, writer in various genres, and has won literary awards and fellowships for creative nonfiction, arts criticism, and poetry through the Loft Literary Center, the Minnesota State Arts Board, Pan-African Literary Forum at the New School, St. Catherine University, among others. And she is also an editor, very much well known for that particular skill set and role that she's played in producing other writers whose works include Rondo children's book series, Joey and Grandpa Johnson's Day in Rondo, and Mr. Rondo's Spirit, published by In Black Ink. Also very critical role in the publication Blues Vision, African American Writing from Minnesota, published by the Minnesota Historical Society Press. And that was co-edited with Alex Pate and J. Otis Powell, the late J. Otis Powell. So, you know, really powerful team there. She also was an editor on The Way We See It, a fresh look at vision loss, which is also by Arcata Press. The Saint Paul Almanac, Arcata Press as well, and Transforming a Rape Culture, which, as you all know, is a very signature work that has that changed the landscape about how we think about rape and you know, sexual assault and other aspects of American culture, published by Milkweed Editions. Fletcher Bush has also lectured at Oxford, England, Accra, Ghana, Mexico, and Toronto, Canada. So without further ado, I introduce to you Pamela R. Fletcher Bush, and please enlighten us about this amazing topic that you have brought to the New School.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I want to make sure I'm not muted. Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight on such a lovely, hot evening in July. You could be anywhere else, but you chose to be here, and I'm really humbled by that. So thank you for your encouragement and your support. So I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully that will be easy to do. We did go through this before. Can everyone see?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes, okay, all right, good. Okay. So I want to begin by explaining what I actually have in mind. I call this talk a recollection of the 80s Twin Cities Black literary arts scene. And when I say recollection, I'm coming directly from a personal perspective and where I was during that time, how I was involved, what I observed, and why I found it really important to tell you about this time. So this talk is informed by the Twin Cities Black Cultural Arts Movement, which was in both the foreground and the background of the Black literary arts scene. So in my participation, I was all over. You know, it was a very interdisciplinary and intersectional time for me, because the music, the dance, the theater, the literary arts, everything that informs our culture as Black people was very important to me, and infused my understanding of what it meant to be a Black person in America, and particularly in in Minneapolis, St. Paul, where I was not raised here. I went to Carleton College, and that's how I got to the Twin Cities, and then came up to that's how I got to Minnesota, and then I came to the Twin Cities as a graduate student at the U. So I wanted to really tell you why I have the how this idea came to me. Why do I want to talk to you about this? In the the late 80s, around 87, 88, Miss Toni K. Bambara, a writer, author, college professor, documentary, filmmaker. I consider her my mentor, scholar, and social activist, came from New York to, she was invited to come here from New York to the Twin Cities by the Loft Literary Center to give a talk and to do some writing classes, creative writing classes. And so I was really, really happy that she came because I knew of her work. She had just published, well, not just because she came in 87, 88, sometime around there. But her book of the 80s was the book for me was The Salt Eaters, and it was a novel published in 1980. And there's a particular part in that book where the main character asks one of the characters, do you want to be well? Are you sure you want to be well? And I think that's an important question for us as Black people in terms of our wellness in a culture that really insists on us not being well. And so the quote that I have here, the job of the writer is to make revolution irresistible. Her work came to me when I was in college, and she edited this book, The Black Woman. And I don't know if you can see it, but it's really, you see how raggedy it is? It's because I devoured it. And I have it all taped up and everything, but it was a really important book to me. And it's an anthology, and this is how she introduces it. She says, she says, who is the Black woman? She is a college graduate, a dropout, a student, a wife, a divorcee, a mother, a lover, a child of the ghetto, a product of the bourgeoisie, a professional writer, a person who never dreamed of publication, a solitary individual, a member of the movement, a gentle humanist, a violent revolutionary. She is angry and tender, loving and hating. She is all of these things and more. And she is represented in a collection that for the first time truly lets her bare her soul and speak her mind. And that is very true, because when you read this book, it has so many diverse experiences and perspectives. And I just devoured it, as I said, because it was something that I'd never read before, coming out of a white suburban community in which I lived in Southern California. So I dedicate this to her because when she came to the Twin Cities and when we met and we spent some time, she was here over a period of a few days, and she said something to me that was really remarkable. She pointed out that what we were doing in the Twin Cities at the time was really phenomenal to her. First of all, because she did not know, she said, who knew that you had Black people up here? Because most people did not think Black people lived far up here, north, upper Midwest. And she was serious about that, as most people are. Whenever I would travel around, they'd say, where are you from? That Black people are there? And so she said, who knew? She says, you guys really have something really important, and this is like a Black Renaissance. Now, this is somebody from New York saying this. And so I was like really amazed by what she was saying, because it's, you probably have heard this, or maybe you haven't, but it's this this little saying about the big fishes in the water swimming around, and he sees these two little fish, and he says, "Hey, how's the water?" And they look at each other, and they're looking at him, and they're like, "What is water?" And so that's what I felt like. I felt like she's talking about an environment in which I'm swimming in, but I have no idea what I'm swimming in, you know, because it's just, to me, my habitat, and it's natural to me, and I'm just taking it for granted. But she wasn't taking it for granted, and she said, "You really ought to let it be known what you guys got here in this, you know, in this place." So when I went last year, and Anura and Raquel would probably remember this, we went to Black Table Arts Cooperative. They had just acquired a building, and they were having open house. And it's a really nice, inviting, wonderful space for artists, literary artists, visual artists, what have you. And I walked into this space, and they had these various rooms named after writers, scholars, activists. And one of the rooms, this conference room, is named for Toni Cade Bambara. And I said, "Wow, this is really fantastic. I am so glad to see this room." And I just talked about how I remembered her. And, you know, she died in 1995. And I said, I was so glad to have met her acquaintance and have spoken, and I had a chance to speak with her, and what she had said about her visit here, and how she was impressed by what the Black people were doing, artists. And so everybody looked at me, and Kino looked at me, and he said, "What? You met Toni Cade Bambara? How is that possible?" And I just thought that was really funny. And I thought, well, we could talk about that, because she really had a word for us then, and she has a word for us now. I think it's really a timeless word. And so Carolyn Holbrook was also with us. And so she thought about how there needed to be some way to reach out to our younger people and let them know about our history. And and particularly our artistic history and our cultural history in the Twin Cities. And that's how this particular point came to me about what I wanted to say. And that's why this is something that I'm bringing to you tonight. And I hope that it will inform you, that it will delight you. I really had a good time putting this PowerPoint together. And I just have to give a shout out to my dear husband, who was really tireless and patient with me and helping me with all my tech problems. And sweetheart, you're just amazing. Thank you so much for all your help. And I just want to thank God for the opportunity, for all the blessings that he's brought me. Okay, so Wonders of the Wind. Now, I want to talk about this particular group, and we call ourselves WOW, Wonders of the Wind, and our connection to the African American Cultural Center Ensemble. And I'm so glad Bruce Henry is in the house. Yay, Bruce. Thank you for coming to support me tonight. And this was a very important time for me, the early 80s. I think I met him around 1981, somewhere around there, him and Slim. And I don't really remember how we met, but I do remember that we met and that I joined WOW. I was just hanging around, and before I knew it, I was with them. And it was just so refreshing and wonderful for me to be able to connect on that level, on that level where we were artists and we really wanted to support each other and care about each other and to perform. And as Bruce said in our chat earlier, in our breakout chat, we wanted to save our people. And so he, in 1979, he's a musician, and Slim, Larry McKenzie, a poet. They founded Wonders of the Wind, or WOW, and it became a natural, or I would say a cultural, it was natural for me to connect to them. And it was a cultural force of the 1980s in my mind. So I'm going to be talking to you about what is idiosyncratically important to me And so I can't speak to what other people thought about the 80s and how they experienced it, particularly in a cultural way, but I'm talking about it from my point of view and how I was involved in what I observed. So I talked a lot about that time with Bruce and Slim and Amadilo, who was also one of the co-founders and a member of the group. So when I was speaking to Bruce, Bruce said this: the collective was formed to nurture and support each other as artists. And Bruce and Slim had migrated from Chicago, Bruce by way of Wisconsin, to the Twin Cities in the mid-70s. And Angelo Chapman and Amadilo Cousin, also from Chicago, were among the founding members. And as Amadilo explained to me, WOW came together to keep the soul of the Black arts. And around that late 70s, Bruce also founded the African American Cultural Center Ensemble, the AACC or AC Ensemble, which was composed of musicians. And as he was speaking to me recently, just the other day, he said that the two groups came together and he never saw them as being separate. And he's right, because that's how I experienced it. We were never really separate from each other. So the collective. So on the WOW side, you had Jerry Alexander, Shada or Shamaya Biobi Hammond, Angelo Chapman, Ifasi, Malanta Kaur, Amadilo Cousin, myself, yours truly, Bruce A. Henry, Jahar Hill, and Simasa or Slim Larry McKenzie. And on the ensemble side, Tim Bradley, Daryl Boudreaux, Touré Cousin, Richard Greenwood, Ahmad Gross, AKA Brother Love, Bruce A. Henry, and David Wright III. So that was the collective. Okay, so why am I not advancing?
Are you using your arrows?
I am.
Try the space bar.
Somehow I'm stuck.
Huh.
See, I told you that today has been a really weird tech day. Okay, here we are.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, I don't know what's going on.
That's all right.
But that's going, let's see if we can go, that's going backwards. I'm trying to go forward. Well, okay. All right, so.
There we go.
Here we are. I think that's
there
where
we are.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So the African American Cultural Center had, several early locations, and Bruce mentioned in our group, and when we were in the breakout, that it started, I think he said it was in Sabathani. I know it was a location in downtown, which is this 8th Street location. And then we ended up in the Riverside, the Cedar Riverside area. And that's where I came into to knowing about the African American Cultural Center and WOW and the AC Ensemble. And so I just wanted to show the band that's standing there. And also wanted to give you some idea of what was going on with Bruce and friends. It was really, the ensemble with other local artists, recording artists, musical artists. And that was a very special time because we would get together and WOW would be in the house. And we also spent time in the park. Plymouth Park was a place where we would spend time. And Amadilo told me an interesting story. He said that the summer festival started as a response to the Aquatennial, because the Aquatennial really did not have Black people in mind, particularly Black children, Black youth, and the Black youth would show up and they would rip and run throughout, throughout the area, the space, and they really didn't feel that they really belonged, and wasn't really happy, but they were there anyway. And so it became important for the community to have their own thing, on the north side. And so that's how this festival came to be. So this is a memory that I have about being with WOW and AC at the park. And I wanted to play you some clip here.
First true love, black was the color of my first true love. You gave her, I got so much more than I thought. Yeah, black was the color of my first true love. Black was the color of my first true love. Your love and wisdom has made a better man out of me. Your sharp insight helping me with the pitfalls that I just couldn't see. So much I owe you, baby, for helping making us be free. I said just having you near has made a better man out of me. Now I haven't forgotten, sugar, the black songs that we used to sing. So circumstance and life taught me a tune with an unfamiliar ring. I said, somewhere over the rainbow is a new tune that I've learned, but it won't dull the everlasting love and respect that you earned. Black was the color of my first love. Black was the color of my first love. Black was the color of my first
And you heard in this piece, Daryl Boudreaux on the congos, and I'm thinking it was Slim on the vocals. I'm not sure, but it sounds like it was him. And you see Bruce, young Bruce, in his dashiki, standing there. So here we are. This is the Northside Summer Fun Festival that I was referring to earlier. And I wanted to just show some photos of family fun, people chilling at the park, taking in the activity and just enjoying themselves. And I observed that, and I felt that way too. It was nice to be around each other in the community and listening to music and listening to people reading poetry and dance, and the dancers or Chowi dancers would show up. It was a wonderful time. And then there was a particular event that we did that I wanted to bring your attention to, and this was at the Riverview, and we called it the Harvest of Harmony. And I was the stage manager, and I had forgotten about that until both Slim and Armadillo mentioned it to me. But we were there that night, and it was a fundraiser for our creative endeavors. And so we were in collaboration with Jerry Alexander, one of our poets. And we just had a great time, and I want you to see who was in the house. So I'm wondering what happened here. Okay. It's weird stuff happening. I don't know what happened to my part of my slide. But one of the people I wanted to point out that Ntando Zulu was there as a storyteller, Rose Harmon, who is now Rose McGee, and Jerry Alexander, and Wonders of the Wind later on. And there we are named on this is the program, the inside of the program. The other was the cover, the back and front cover. And then we had the inside of the cover, but I'm not sure what happened to the inside. But it gives you an idea of how the event went. And what I meant to do here is to show you the continuation of the participation of various people who were part of the movement, part of the cultural movement, the art scene, even then 40 years ago, and still are today. Now, this is a really important point in WOW's history, and it converges with the playwright August Wilson, who had won the Pulitzer Prize and a Tony Award for Fences in 1985. And so Amadilo had an appointment to interview him regarding his new achievement, and this was at on the television channel 33, Rogers cable system, and we also had WOW that showed up, and we had the dancers Shada and Brenda, the poets Jahar and Slim, and of course we had Bruce there on vocals. So that was a really important event, and it was an important time for Penumbra, as well as it was for August himself. And in this picture on the right is of Lou Bellamy and August Wilson celebrating that achievement, and they're at the MLK Center. And I wanted to talk about Penumbra Theater Company and what it means to the community, and community of writers and specific playwrights, and writers. August Wilson is from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and he found out about Penumbra, as a lot of playwrights and actors did. Penumbra was on the map, even though it was on a shoestring budget, very small. I used to go to Penumbra for every event. I used to go and hang out, watch the performances, got to know the playwrights in residence, the actors. And it was a really exciting thing to see it, start and be so instrumental and influential even around the country. And there were other Black companies, but Penumbra had something really special. And August Wilson recognized this. He came in 76. Well, actually, Lou Bellamy and others founded Penumbra in 1976. And August Wilson came in 77 to see this play called Eden. And he talks about, in an interview with Ed Bradley, he talks about how when he was in Pittsburgh growing up, he was not a playwright at that time. He couldn't write dialogue, but he was a poet and he wrote stories, but he wasn't a playwright. And when he came to Saint Paul, he went to Penumbra and he noticed how professional, even though it was small, Lou meant business, and it was really, really an intentional effort. And he was ruthless in terms of, people would come from all over the country and want to be part of the company. And Lou was very blunt about whether or not people could cut it. And if they didn't cut it, he would tell them why, and he would tell them that they had to go and get additional skills. They had to beef up their skills. And if they did that, they could come back and he would consider them. And that's what they did. And they came back and he considered them and they became part of the company. So he had a reputation for excellence. And so when August Wilson came and watched this theater, this show, Eden, he thought about, and this is what he said in an interview, he thought about whether or not he'd ever be good enough to see his work on the stage. And he decided that he wanted to be at Penumbra that badly. So he moved from Pittsburgh to Saint Paul. And he ended up living very close. He didn't drive. He always took the bus, and he worked in coffee shops. That's where he did his work. And so he would write audacious, what Lou would consider audacious things, because he wasn't writing about some universal, how a lot of playwrights or people in general, Black people in general, were writing symbolically about Black people's lives or writing about an idea, or ideals. But August wanted to write about his experiences and what he thought Black people were going through and why they were going through it. And he saw that Black people were really lost because they were disconnected from their culture. And so he would write these lines, and Lou would say to him, "You can't say these things. People aren't going to be able to handle it." And he's like, I'm going to say it anyway. I'm going to write it anyway. And so he did. And so his first professional show was, I think, The Bard on the Sacred Hill. And his early success had a lot to do with his committing to being at Penumbra and growing his and developing his craft as a playwright. Because he said that when he got here, he could hear the dialogue, he could hear the voices, he could write about his home in Pittsburgh in the way that he could not write about it when he was in Pittsburgh, but he could write about it when he was, or he could hear the voices when he was in Saint Paul. And so his success as a playwright has a lot to do with the culture of Penumbra. And so I just wanted to bring that to your attention, because even though he was August Wilson did not consider himself a playwright, he is a writer. He was a writer. He died in 2008, I think. And he said something that was really interesting to me, and that was that art was always first. Art was before anything else. That art was first and life was second. Anything that he did that he felt he had to fit it into his art, because art was the driving force for him. And so in his lifetime as a playwright, he did achieve, out of 8 plays, 7 of them went to Broadway. And, of course, Fences in the 80s was in 1985 was one of those plays. And when he went to he was at a roundtable discussion in, I think it was in Philadelphia, at Public Theater, among other, with other playwrights. I don't know if I got the location correct, but I know it's Public Theater. And Marion McClinton, who was one of the directors of Penumbra, became his director and was very instrumental in his success of Fences. And so Marion McClinton compared August to Michael Jackson. He said, this is the Michael Jackson of playwrights at this table. This is Michael Jackson at this table. Now, Michael Jackson, of course, had 10 #1 hits in the 1980s, and he was very influential musically. And so for him to make that comparison at the time was extraordinary. And so that's how powerful he saw August Wilson's work. So it's interesting to me that Penumbra had that kind of influence, and writers will get their influence wherever they can get it. It doesn't have to be strictly from literature. It can be from music. It can be from dance, and that's a lot of my influences are musical. I was a dancer. I really wanted to be able to play music once I didn't have to be pressured into playing it, because I didn't want to play the piano, but now I wish I had. My mother wanted me to, but that's another story. But anyway, I think that creative people get their influence from everywhere. And I wanted to give you this poem, speaking of poetry, literature, wow, going back to wow directly. This is a poem, an illustration by Amadillo. An artist is a warrior too. And it reminds me too of August Wilson's spirit, because he was known as an angry playwright. And he said that he had a reason to be angry because of the injustice, the oppression, and the difference of how Black people were treated compared to how white people were treated, particularly in the criminal justice system, and particularly when it came to police brutality, which was an issue. Even then, as we know, has always been an issue, but even then in the 80s. And so I want to read this poem by Amadillo, and he said that I could read it in my voice, so I'm going to try to do that. An artist is a warrior too. They say artists are spacey, sleepwalkers, creating visions from their dreams, thoughts, and colorful imaginations, absent-minded. That phrase is used a lot. Late for most appointments because of too many previous appointments, seriously trying to be in 3 places at the same time, in a strange way succeeding. An artist can touch a place without even being there. You see, artists are spacey because they have to cover so much ground. With visions of the land, an artist helps to direct people. With visions of the sky, an artist helps to inspire the people. And with visions of the spirit, that powerful spirit of God that lives within each one of us, an artist helps the people to master the world around them. An artist is and does many things, but never forget, as we walk these hallowed halls of our collective imagination, an artist is a writer too. I want to wrap up this section and of talking about wow before I go to the other areas of what I found important, influential to me in the 80s. There's a chat that Amadillo wrote, and Angelo Chapman will, well, you'll hear them when they do the chat as I play it, but Angelo is the leading person. He brought the music to the chat, and this was our chat, and I wanted you to hear it. And I was just so pleased last summer when I was scheduled to do this, and it didn't go that according to schedule. But I had contacted Bruce and Slim and Amadillo And they contacted, and I didn't know this was a surprise, so that's why I'm not in it. But they got together and they recorded this, and it's just so much fun, and I really love hearing it. So I hope you'll enjoy it.
Wonders of the wind comes in many forms, just like a hurricane, whirlwind when it's born. We acknowledge you as a mighty, powerful force upon this earth. And we want to pattern ourselves behind you.
Wonders of the wind.
Wonders of the wind.
Wonders of the wind.
Wonders of the wind comes in many forms.
It's like a hurricane.
Rising of the storm. We acknowledge you.
We acknowledge you
We acknowledge you as a mighty, powerful force. We want to be like you. Wonders of the wind come in many forms. And just like a hurricane, rising of a storm. We acknowledge you as a mighty, powerful force on this earth. And we want to pattern ourselves like you. Y'all must have had something back in the day, man. What am I looking at?
And we know that God has had his hand in there somewhere. And we want to pattern ourselves after you.
So in addition to Wonders of the Wind and their influence on my life in my 20s then, is the Guild Press, which is located in Robbinsdale, Minnesota. And this was a really fascinating place for a press. I live near Robbinsdale, so I'm saying this thing. It's like, who would think about a press in Robbinsdale, Minnesota? But this press was really endearing and important to Black writers because the co-founder and senior editor, Leon Knight, in partnership with his wife, Jenny Knight, offered a vehicle to Black writers, editors, and visual artists in the Twin Cities and around the world, actually. And during the 1980s, Guild Press published at least 6 books featuring Black writers, editors, and visual artists. And see, it was something that most people would not even know was going on. And I would not have known about Guild Press, but I was at a conference, and I think it was in St. Cloud. I didn't know Leon. And at the time I was teaching at the University of Minnesota part-time in women's studies. And I was talking to someone, and apparently he overheard me saying where I was teaching, and he approached me and he asked me if did I know anything about community colleges? And I said, no, I don't know anything about community colleges. And he said, would you be interested in teaching at a community college? If I were to talk to you about it and have you come to my class, I think you'd be a really good teacher in the community college system. I said, no, I have a job, I'm not interested. But at any rate, he and I became acquaintances, and he told me about Guild Press and that he had a regular gathering of writers. And I didn't know they were Black, he didn't say that. But he invited me, and I showed up one evening and I saw all these Black people I didn't know. And they were people who were involved. I guess you would call them Guild Press writers. That's what I call them now. That's what I call myself now. And he was Leon Knight, he passed in trying to see, when was that? 2012, I think. I don't quite remember the actual date, but it's been a while. But he was really an interesting person in that he understood, and I say interesting in terms of his ability to deal with a person's humanity and not get stuck, particularly for a white man, not to get stuck on their pigmentation, on any stereotype, what have you. He was a political activist for the African nation, and that was called Rhodesia at the time. He ended up being thrown out. He and his wife were run out of there. But he was helping the people in their overthrow of the colonialists, and helped them get the name of Zimbabwe. And he adopted some children from there. And so he was a really open person, and he was open to various cultures, writers from all over the country, all over the world. But he was specifically interested in giving a platform to Black writers. And so he did this service, and was a mentor to me. He, as a result of his influence, I ended up teaching at North Hennepin, and he became a mentor to me. And he had told me, because of his activism, and he was one of the founding, he was one of the founding staff, I shouldn't say staff, faculty in the English department at North Hennepin Community College. And so he knew the chancellor really well, et cetera. And he said that they talked about wanting to bring people of color into the system because it was time. And he wanted to have that happen. And he came to me and said, do you know other Black people who would be other Black faculty that would be interested in coming into the community college system? And I only knew another person. And I contacted that person, and we ended up going through the interview process and what have you. And he said that he would do a class action suit if they did not hire us, because we were the top candidates for these jobs. So he was really an interesting man. And because of him, Gill Press was a really influential and powerful force in a lot of writers' lives. So I don't know what's going on with my slides here, but at any rate, he published at least 6 books, and I wanted to show you what the books are, but my slides are getting corrupted somehow. But one of the books, you see here, Black Woman, Sorrow, Rosa, Bogar, and Survival Cycle of Black Women, and Black Men Still Singing, 3 Black Women, and The Bearer of Blackness in the corner that you can't see. And then this book by Rose Harmon, And Then I Felt, who is our very own Rose McGee. And so she published her very first book of poetry through Gill Press. And I just wanted to read her acknowledgement because I thought it was like so apropos in terms of how writers think. And she said, to my previous audiences, thanks for not booing me off stage. To the members of Funzana, Maisie, Marvin, Denise, thanks for teaching me a word in Swahili. To St. John Elementary, East High, and Lane College instructors that I once had, please disregard grammatical and typographical errors. To my father, Leroy Burns, thanks for the use of your typewriter. To Reverend Heron and Zion Baptist members, thanks for not crucifying my poems used in your bulletins on occasions. To all my friends and relatives, remain so out. What does it remain so after you've read your secrets? To all my friends and relatives, remain so. Okay, remain so. Continue to be my friends. Okay, I guess that's what she's saying after you've read your secrets in my book. And to Tom Hughes, thanks for your editing efforts. And to my grandmother, Rosie Eccles, don't read Section 5. But as you know, Rose is she now is a staff person at the Minnesota Humanities Center. She is an entrepreneur, playwright, and writer, and also the it's a Sweet Potato Comfort Pie. That's her company. The next press I want to bring to your attention that was really important at the time, New Rivers Press, and the publication of The Butterfly Tree. And Conrad Belford was the editor, and he has since passed. He was a human rights commissioner from 1969 to 1971, and he was also a novelist and a college professor at North Hennepin. And I met him before. That's the person that I brought, or at least told about the job at North Hennepin. And we both taught creative writing and expository writing at North Hennepin. But in 1984, New Rivers Press publisher Bill Truesdale invited Conrad Belford to edit the Minnesota's project number 2. And this project featured Black writers and visual artists. And the name of the project was taken from Alex Pate's short story, The Butterfly Tree. I want to talk, go back. I don't know if we could be able to get to this point where here we are. I don't know what happened. But anyway, I wanted to give you a flavor of the writers, because you will see these writers show up again and again. So Jerry Alexander, Rosa Bogart, Dr. Maurice Britz, George Claiborne, myself, Bernard Finney, Rose Harmon, aka Rose McGee, Hazel Clayton Harrison, Essie Caldwell Cameron, Angela Kennemore, and Carolyn Holbrook Montgomery, now Carolyn Holbrook, Beverly A. Russell, Dr. Gary Smith, and Mardicia Strickland. So along those lists, you will see these same writers show up in The Butterfly Tree and other publications. The Butterfly Tree. So I wanted you to see that the writers in The Butterfly Tree, as well as the graphic artists, Tacumba Aiken, S.A.2 Jones, illustrated the interior, and Tacumba did the cover of the book. And you can't see it where it's obscured by, but you'll see it at the end, because I do bring the book at the end, the cover, so that you can see it. And so if you, as I said, if you go back and you look at who the writers were in this book, Marcella Taylor and myself, Essie Caldwell, Lynette, Conrad Belford, Carolyn Holbrook, Soini Guyton, Donald Gavin, Alex Pate, R.F. Gillum, and Julie. Am I in the right place here? Yeah. J.G. Metzels, Lynette, again, Roy McBride, Mary Easter Moore, Mary Moore Easter, excuse me, Lynn McWatt, Jimmy Lucas, George Claiborne, A.R. Simmons, Conrad, and Louis Daniel Alamayo. So those were the writers in The Butterfly Tree, and again, as I say, Tacumba and Say2 illustrators for the book. And you may or may not know that Tacumba is a Guggenheim winner this year for fine arts. say, Joan, I wanted to show you some illustrations that Say Two and Takuma did inside the book. So this is an illustration that Say Two did to illustrate my short story, The Parting. And then here's an illustration that Takuma did to illustrate a chapter of a book I was working on at the time, The Going Away Party. And I wanted you to see the book cover artist. Say, Takuma has been consistent in the book cover that for the books that I have been involved in terms of editing or writing. So here you have the butterfly tree. Then the Saint Paul Almanac 10-year retrospective. He was featured in the Saint Paul Almanac constantly throughout the past 15 years. We asked him to do this cover for the 10-year retrospective when I was executive editor of the Saint Paul Almanac Arcata Press. And then you see that his work is also here for the Blues Vision cover, African-American writers from Minnesota. So I wanted you to see the continuity of the writers and artists over the past 40 years, whether they are editors, graphic artists, visual artists, writers, but the intersection too, as I said, and interdisciplinary effects and influences that we all had and have on the cultural arts, the Black cultural arts movement that was going on during the 1980s. When I go back and I look at these experiences, these events, how I participated, how others participated, and how we really established a foundation and a framework for what is going on today. We now have Black publishers. We didn't have Black publishers then. And Alex and I dreamed in the 80s of having our own publishing company, you know, but he's gone to do wonderful work as a writer and essayist and playwright and children's book writer and an entrepreneur. And he has the Emerson Classroom that he is CEO of, president of that company. And Say Two, all the work that he has done as a visual artist throughout the years, award-winning, as well as Say Two, every award that could be won, you know, particularly, you know, in the arts in the upper Midwest and around the country. They have achieved those awards over the last 40 years. And then the writers that you saw across the board in various ways, and various, I should say, in those various publications, either the Butterfly Tree or Blues Vision, and some in the Saint Paul Almanac as well, have gone on to publish poetry books and novels and et cetera. It's been an exciting time. It's going to continue to be an exciting time. We have Mary in the house from Stride Publishing, and she just had a launch for her publishing company, her bookstore, in fact, in the IDS building, and congratulations to her. We have a newer announcement with Papyrus Press and in Black ink. And I am going to spend a lot of time with Arcata Press in developing that arm of Saint Paul Almanac as well, regarding opportunities for BIPOC writers. And the list goes on. It's just a lot that has happened in the last 40 years, and particularly in the last, I'd say, 10 years. And Black ink came into existence about going on 4 years ago with community support and participation in thinking about what we needed as craft building and publishing in the in various areas of literature, having our own power, having the voice to tell our stories, to own our stories. It's just a really important time, and it couldn't be a time that is so necessary given what's going on in our country and the need to use, as as we used to say, the mighty pen, to fight, to help fight the oppressive forces that we are encountering. And we've always encountered them. And therefore the literary arts, the cultural arts, the Black arts movement, the Harlem Renaissance in the 1920s, the new Negro Renaissance all around the country that was happening in places like Chicago and LA and other places. It's just, we've always been instrumental in using the art as a weapon. So I just wanted to bring my perspective as an artist, a literary artist, and as someone who was deeply involved in our cultural community. And I just thank you for your attention and for being here tonight. And I hope we can have a great conversation. Thank you.
Okay, let us all unmute and give a round of applause and yell to Pamela Fletcher Bush. Wow.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so as customary, I guess we have two options here, and I'm going to give Pamela the call. We can go out and talk about what we just heard. I mean, just phenomenal connection of history, and we can do that right now, and then come back and discuss and have question and answer, or we can ask some questions now. So what would you like to do, Pamela?
Well, I think we're small enough, if people would agree, maybe we could just stay together and just have a discussion among the, how many people are there, 19?
Mm-hmm.
Is that too big of a group?
Nope, seems like people feel comfortable with that. We just want y'all to be ready to talk. Sometimes when you go out in smaller groups, it feels a little bit more safe. We don't want you to be quiet. So
well, you know what I would do, Angia, I mean, I still have the old school marn in me. I'll call on people.
Okay, well, you go ahead, go right ahead. I guess we'll open up for a Q&A, and just, anything you guys want to share about what you just heard. And then if you have questions, you can put them in the chat, and make sure that we get to those as well.
Good evening, everyone. I just made several different connections. Nicole from Boston. And so I remember my aunt introducing me to August Wilson. So as a little girl, the plays and trips was my grandmother and my aunt taking me. And so just thinking about, I was first exposed to him, it would have been the late 80s, right, in Boston. And how the church mothers in community belong to theater clubs. And I don't know that we do that anymore, right? And that was the way that they stayed connected to the community and plays, and being able to go and also bring other generations. And then I also think of my very good, one of my best Christian sisters here in Minnesota, who taught my daughter, and to know that Christine Belfry Johnson, her and her husband published Rose's book as well as my book. But I don't know if she realized the significance of her as a younger sister, right? Mm-hmm. Helping to publish Rose's book. So I can't wait for her to get back from her trip. And just, I know she's Auntie Rose to Christine, but to me, she's a community mother. And so I just love being able to make that full connection and hearing and seeing names. I'm a part-time Minnesotan and I keep coming back, but it is because of this beautiful community that continues to bless me, my children, and our experience here, and naturally our connection to the CSR family as well. So it's just good to be here tonight and learn so much more about the roots of community here.
Mhm. Thank you.
Hi, I want to take myself off of mute. I'm watering my yard, well, but I was listening at the same time. But all I have to say is, wow, I got what I wanted, was looking for. A lot of information I wasn't privy to. I'm from Saint Paul, born and raised. And the reason I came tonight, because I wanted to get some more knowledge of what I didn't know, which is a lot. I really appreciate what you shared, and would like to have at least some of them books maybe put in the chat so I can look them up.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Davu had his hand raised, so you can go ahead.
Yeah, this is Davu. Pamela, I don't know if you remember me.
I do, of
I'm
course.
so grateful. Hey, I'm so grateful for the story you just told. I think Anura said the connections that you were able to make to the national scene and writers coming in who would help us to see what we couldn't see about this water we've been in. And then also express the importance of letting other people know. And what you all managed to do in the 80s, it seems really amazing. And it makes me, I'm fortunate to have spent time in archives, but I know most people don't. It makes me realize the importance of archives and documenting all of these things, the handbills that you showed, the programs, all of this, so that these stories carry forward. The question I had for you is who was the audience and where were they getting the books? Who wrote books? Where would people purchase them?
The Butterfly Tree and the Almanac and the Blues Vision. Okay, the Butterfly Tree, I'm not sure because that book is probably out of print. It was published 40 years ago. And
I mean, during the time, at the time, where would people
you mean at
find-
the time?
Yeah,
At the
yeah,
time.
yeah,
Okay, at the time, for the Butterfly Tree, the Minnesota's project #2, I think that they were basically trying to go to various ethnic groups and do their part in recognizing that there's more than one Minnesota. That's why I call it mini Minnesotans. And I think that they were really wanting people to know that there were Black people who were writing. And so it wasn't Black people per se, it was a Minnesota audience, in general. That's my understanding. And so as a result, because of the Butterfly Tree, a lot of us got jobs as writers, as faculty. I mean, I had people approach me and ask me, will you teach poetry? I said, no, I won't teach poetry because I don't even know how to teach poetry, but I can teach fiction, whatever. But yeah, so it gave us a lot of exposure because people didn't know we existed and they didn't know what we knew, right? They didn't know that we had the capacity, the talent to do what we were doing. And then when it came to Guild Press, Leon wanted us to have an opportunity to voice our experiences. And because he felt like it was important for us to be able to do it, to have a voice, and for other people, to know about our experiences authentically, that we were telling our own stories. So that was 40 years ago, that was saying something, for someone to be an ally to our communities, and not just to the Black community, but to the immigrant community, to people from all of the country, all over the world. He was that kind of person. So he was really progressive. So it was like, these are people, these are writers you should know. Yeah. Thank you so much for that question and for your comment.
Okay, we have Pat Holder.
Hi, Ngia, and hello, Pamela. I'm a former colleague of
Yeah.
of you. I saw the note come through, but I
Yeah.
couldn't figure out my technology. No, I've been retired for 10 years now from North Hennepin.
Okay.
But we did not come to the Twin Cities until 1981. But we did, connect right away with Penumbra, and I knew Leon Knight, Conrad Belfour.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, interesting individual. In fact, Conrad was on my search committee at North Hennepin.
Okay. Sure. It's
But
so good to see you, Pat. Thank you for coming tonight.
Well, I saw that and I said, well, I could learn something, and I've been trying to do this, especially when we can do it, virtually.
Mhm.
Real interesting, but it's good to make the connections because we know a lot of same people. And by the way, my husband is a Carleton graduate.
Oh, is he? All right.
Okay.
But tell him hello from one Carl to another.
Yeah, he's laughing. Okay, thank you. That was very interesting.
Thank
A
you.
lot of information, and I see how much I missed. But at that time, I think our children were born in that era.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
was very interesting.
Thank you.
Pamela, I had a question about the butterfly tree. You had mentioned that it was inspired by a poem that Alex Pate wrote.
A short story.
A short story.
Mhm.
And then it was the title, but was it also the short story was in the publication as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So what Conrad did, I mean, this is what happens with a lot of editors, if you find a title from a text, from a short story or a poem or what have you, and you really think that will speak to the entire collection, then you use that. And so Conrad thought that the title would be a really fitting title for the collection. And so he took it from Alex's short story. The title of his short story. And I see, Margaret, you had your hand up?
Yeah, two things. I remember now in the 80s, I took a class from Alex Pate, a writer's class. He was writing his first book, and he always carried his notebook with him. And he says, always carry your story, because you never know when you're going to write a note down. And he always had that with him. The other thing that I think I remember, the Women's Press that was over on University, they had a book rack. And I'm sure some of those books were sold at Women's Press. That was one of the go-to places, especially when I was in communications class at Metro State. And so always looking for different types of authors and poetry, because poetry was my gig then. And Women's Press had the books, because you couldn't get books by Black authors in too many places.
That's right.
And the art, as I said in our breakout group, my memory of art was my children's art that was hanging on my refrigerator.
Yeah.
But also at that time, the University of Minnesota was having neighborhood classes. That's how I got back into school, was because they would pay for some of your education. And it was what I always wanted, was to have a degree. So that's where I stand, and look at the 80s as a backdrop for the 70s, because I was in civil rights movements and that kind of thing in my 20s. And so when the 80s came along, I was a mom and a wife and stay at home and doing those kinds of things. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. I just wanted to say that Margaret is writing a tremendously interesting and profound novel. So you will see it in the future. You will see it. It's so, she's doing a fantastic job on it. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I'm in the process now of being just confused.
Okay, well, we'll unravel the confusion. You were so clear when we were talking about it. She's doing her like third revision, third or fourth revision of the book. Well, really more than that, but she is doing a major revision of the novel right now. So you're not confused. You just got to do the work. That's all.
Okay.
So I asked people to put in the chat what your main takeaway from tonight, one thing that surprised you. And, there's a few people that, have typed in there the history and the journey of community members I know or heard of, and I will take away our storytelling power. It is real power. So keep putting stuff in the chat. That gives us really a sense of what we've learned here today. This is Raquette. We've been collecting single copies of publications of folks from the Black community in Minnesota. This is In Black Ink's work. That we have a website that will launch that include all Black writers from Minnesota. So they're basically archiving all of this work that has been done, throughout the history of Black people in Minnesota, and really providing a central place where we can access those things. Some people are surprised how rich Black history is in Minnesota. And I was surprised to see that my friend Phyllis Sloan was published in one of the poetry books. For me, the big takeaway is kind of goes back to what you said in the beginning, Pamela, when you talked about Toni Cade Bambara and her comments about this place, the Twin Cities. And for me, when I came to the Twin Cities in the 80s, as a young professional working at Honeywell with a young child, and was able to immediately enter into the Black community and the arts through African dance and, going to all the cultural events at the U of M. It was a really prolific time. And my comment that I said was that coming from St. Louis, which is a very largely Black populated town, I was shocked and amazed at how much cultural production was happening in the Twin Cities at that time. And I think that the statement that resonates with me still is that we have no idea, how rich we really are in the Twin Cities and what all has happened. And I think this tonight, it really gives us a sense of that landscape that is a continuum, right? And that the things that are happening now have been seeded, just like what you all were able to do in the 80s was seeded by the people who, came before, right? And so I think that we can all really understand that richness and really, be proud of that, but also just to acknowledge it, the power that we do have and that we have had. And, many of us being transplants and also people who have been there for generations, but all together is such a rich tradition in the arts. And now we have people in key positions within these literary organizations like the Loft, like, the foundations that fund the arts. We're learning how to get funding and, In Black Ink, we're really beginning to institutionalize ourselves in a way that we can actually, produce writers. And so really appreciate the work that you all are doing. My son is a 6th generation Black Minnesotan. Yes, sir. So we're going to actually kind of close out. I guess I want to say if there's—
Who's got a question? And
okay, Bruce Henry raised his hand, and then we have another. Is that the person you were talking about?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Go ahead, Mr. Bruce Henry.
Okay. I'll be brief. I just wanted to say how much I really enjoyed the presentation. As a person who strives to tell stories, you really told a good story, a good a good description of what was going on as I remember it. I can't help but feel personal about it because this was a very important era in my life in the development of who I am. And I don't want to go on to about it, but for the last 40 years or whatever, whatever I've done, wherever it was, I'm still trying to circle back to that moment in time. I've never lost sight of that. And so many of the people that were with me it was such a beacon in our lives that I say when I left that era, I went to Babylon, and I've been trying to get away from Babylon ever since.
That's right.
And one other thing about it too, looking at history, another reason it feels personal to me because I was there with all my heart and soul, and it gets really an example of how history is written. If you hadn't told this story tonight, I don't know if I would have heard it from anyone's ever perspective. I wouldn't have heard my life anywhere else because I just don't know if that would have ever happened. So personally, and I can't separate that. I have to thank you for including me in this wonderful story about friends, people I love, and we were all one community. It was so beautiful, poet, individual, as you described it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you so much. And thank you for all the help that you gave me. All the help that you gave me along with my other beloved WOW members. It was phenomenal to reconnect, after so many years, but to still feel the love, I just carry it with me because that, like you said, it was a beacon for us. It was so phenomenal to my development as an artist. Yes.
So we are going to close now. We are at time and all rich and full. And what we hope at the new school is that this is a time of learning. It's a time for us to reflect on our own power as people of African descent, unapologetically Black people who unapologetically support, Black culture, Black liberation, that we think about what this means in terms of our own individual actions and what we can do going forward. We can all support Black literary production. We can support these publishers. We can buy literature, buy books. We can also write. Many of us have stories inside of us, and we can begin to gain the confidence to put some of those things out. So we will be following up with an email with the link for the replay. Also, we generally will include some resources. So somebody mentioned that, I think it was Bonnie, about wanting to have some of the books. So we'll actually try to do like some links to some of the works that were mentioned tonight. And also just some of the authors and the publishers that are where you can find these books and really start to, promote and appreciate what's happening in the Twin Cities. And in closing, we will close with our customary chant that we say every time we start and end the new school, which is progress, sure, sure, sure. So this is a call and response, and we want everyone to unmute. I'm asking you also to click on that link in the chat and fill out a 3-question survey. It helps us to know kind of what other topics you want to hear from the new school, how things were in this particular class, and we want to get your feedback. So please click on that link now so that it's open on your computer, and then you can finish that later. Our next new school is August 26th. So every fourth Friday, we are at this same link, same place, fourth Friday. So put that on your calendar for August 26th. We'll have Dr. Keith Mays in the house in August. And so July, August, it's August. Okay, so we ready? Unmute. Progress?
Sure.
Okay, now I'm gonna do it one more time. I want y'all to, Elder is real deaf about this. He says the sure has to be fast.
Oh, okay.
Slow. So we're gonna try it one more time. Elder's not impressed with our sure yet. So progress.
Sure.
Hey! That was awesome. Okay, so thank you all so much. Please put your email in the chat in case we don't, if you're not getting emails from us, we want you to be in the loop. We don't spam you. We send you one a month about the next new school and another reminder, and then we'll send you a follow-up with all the resources in that. So thank you so much, Pamela, for being here with us and really just giving us the wealth of your experience and your recollection of that time. I hope that more happens with this, that maybe you could do something at the Hennepin County Library. I think this story really needs to get out and be told, and you've done a beautiful work. And so any way we can try to promote that to happen, I think that would be awesome. And so, yes, thank you all. And I think we're going to go out with a little music and a little outro, and then we'll see you all at the next new school.
Yay.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody.
Kind of shocked said, so he's queuing up the music now.
I was writing down emails, so I'm a little slow here, but oh boy.
So you got to go ahead and sing.